forgive me if I'm wrong, you're what I would class as like a true entrepreneur in the sense that you've probably not had a real job.
And all of a sudden I realised actually the harder I work, the more money I earn. And I got to the point where
Funny that, isn't it?
Yeah, almost like hard work pays off. Probably, if they've not gone extinct already, I would say people who market themselves as content writers.
Hello everyone, welcome back to another episode of A Business Space with me, Stephen, from A Content Space. You find me with one of my, this sounds really weird now because he's sat right next to me, but one of my closest friends in business and just in general, Mike Samuels. We've worked together for a number of years on lots of different projects. I also produce his podcast, A Freedom Kickstarter. So without further ado and without being really cringe, Mike, do you want to introduce yourself and tell the tens of viewers that I get on my podcast who you are and what you do?
Yeah, definitely. So I am Mike Samuels, as you said. Broadly speaking, I tend to tell people I'm a copywriter, although I kind of, maybe we'll get into this, I kind of feel that's a bit of a misnomer as to what the actual role is. But yeah, essentially I write words and talk about marketing and positioning and strategy and stuff that help people make more money. And I coach other people to do what I do as well. So my business is very much based around freedom, hence the Freedom Kickstarter. Yeah, and that's kind of it, really. Spend my days bumming around on a laptop.
Brilliant. Bumming around on a laptop's a good one. And most people who watch this podcast will probably watch yours and might know a little bit about you. But if for those who don't, let's give me kind of like 5 minutes. Let's rewind. Like, how did you get to this point? Because everyone who's come into the podcast studio, lots of people who I've spoken to who've come in for other guests know you, have worked with you before. But how did you get to this point of being the Freedom Kickstarter, the coffee shop copywriter? How did you get to this point?
Probably started when I guess I was a teenager. Was always quite good at school. I studied hard, or studied moderately hard. Was very shy though, and wasn't kind of brash, outlandish. I wasn't one of these natural entrepreneurial people at all. But I sort of made the decision I didn't really want to go to university. So I studied law at college. Again, did pretty well at it. Did quite well with A-levels, but just didn't have any desire whatsoever to go to university. I thought about joining the military. My dad, who'd been in the Navy, said to me, definitely don't do that. You don't like taking orders and you ask too many questions. And I've always described myself as a well-behaved rebel. Like, I don't like doing what to do, and I often don't follow rules, but I do it in a very polite, mild-mannered way. So military didn't seem like it'd be the best option. And I was really getting into fitness at the time. I was a bit of a chubby teen. I lost quite a bit of weight. And I thought, you know what? I like training. I would rather go to work in a tracksuit rather than a suit. So I'm going to qualify to become a personal trainer. So I left college at 18 and I moved to London, qualified as a PT, did the course, which, as anyone who's ever done any fitness courses will know, is not exactly the most taxing thing in the world. So qualified in that. And then I got a job in Fitness First in Balham in southwest London. And I say job, you actually paid them for the privilege of working there. So I think at 18 years old, I was paying £650 a month to effectively have my name on a profile board in a gym and some second-hand Fitness First uniform.
What a business model that is, by the way.
They were very likely absolutely rinsing or raking it in rather. But quite quickly, I realised that actually, even though you're in quite an affluent area of southwest London, and even though you had a badge that said personal trainer, rich housewives weren't really willing to pay you £100 an hour to train with you several times a week and work around your schedule.
Sure.
Also, being quite a shy, still teenager at that time, with a fair amount of social anxiety, I was not the best at going up and talking to people, which if you're going to work on a gym floor is quite important. Yeah. Couple that with busy gym, southwest London. I say it was a posh area. One area is quite posh. The other side of the gym was quite rough. Right. So, again, middle class 18-year-old from Hampshire often didn't fit in that well. And tried to stick out for about a year and a half, but just didn't really get anywhere. I had a couple of months where I probably did a couple of grand or so. I think on average I was probably earning about £1,200 a month. Yeah. And I know this was like 15 years ago, but that still was not enough to survive on in London. So I moved back to Southampton. Long story short, became a mobile personal trainer. I basically realised after about 9 months that I really wasn't working hard and I was being lazy, pushed hard to grow my business, and it kind of took off. So I learned a bit of Google SEO, organic SEO. I basically just sort of hesitant to say it, kind of hustled quite hard to get business.
Yeah.
And thought I'm going to give it my all for 6 months, see what happens. Kind of quite close to the end of that 6 months, it really took off. And all of a sudden, I realised actually the harder I work, the more money I earn. And I got to the point where
Funny that, isn't it?
yeah, almost like hard work pays off. And I got to the point in 2012 where I think I was doing about 52 sessions a week.
Wow.
And I was doing some writing work alongside that. So the writing thing had always been like a side project, but I very much wanted to be in like Men's Health, get published on T Nation, that kind of thing. And gradually over time, I got a bit more burnt out with the personal training just because of the hours and the being on your feet all day and that kind of stuff. Moved more and more into online, so a bit of writing, bit of online coaching. And then at some point, I can't remember exactly when, but people started saying to me, we really like your blogs, we really like your writing, your emails. Could you do that for us? And I was like, yeah, probably could try it.
Yeah.
Hired a mentor, guy we both know, Dan Meredith, to help me work on my business.
Sure.
And he was running a copywriting agency at the time. He said to me after about 3 or 4 months, okay, you could grow your fitness business, but actually I think you'd make more money and do better as a copywriter. And so, yeah, I kind of switched over to doing that. And then I think I went all in on copy in about the autumn of 2016. And then, yeah, there's a lot more stuff I could go into, but it's essentially kind of been the journey from there, really.
Amazing. So with you and your business, you, forgive me if I'm wrong, you're what I would class as like a true entrepreneur in the sense that you've probably not had a real job throughout your life. You've kind of always been self-employed, or you might have done a few stints here and there, but you've not had a real job. Is that right?
Yeah, I've had 3 part-time jobs while at college, or right. one in a running shoe shop while I was building up the PT business, but yeah, never had a 9-to-5 contract.
So I think from someone who had like employed roles, I think it takes a special type of person. I think it takes someone who, probably similar to what you said, is that maybe slightly rebellious streak, maybe doesn't want to take orders too much and that type of thing. Obviously, you've mentioned your dad's military background. Do you reckon that stems from there, and maybe seeing what he did and maybe not wanting to do that?
I think I could see pros and cons. Like, I just always assumed that I would have a 9-to-5, and for a while I actually quite wanted. For some reason, I wanted to work in London, and I thought there was something very glamorous about doing an hour-and-a-half train journey, in the morning, and the same again back at night. And that life really appealed to me. But I don't really know what it was. I think probably a combination of my dad saying the military is not for you.
Right.
And then I remember I had a careers counsellor at school, and I did the whole online quiz. Then you went to talk to the careers counsellor, and she said you would do really well working for local government. And my mum worked in local government and said, whatever you do not go into local government. So I suppose both my parents have put me off their careers. Yeah. Then wanting to do law, and actually I said I did okay at A-level. I got I got 2 B's, a C and a D at AS in the first year, and one of those C's was in law. And the law lecturer said to me, unless you do a retake, there's no way you'll get an A. Wow. And I kind of thought, if I don't get an A, I won't get into a top university, and do I really want to be a lawyer if I've not been to a top university? As it was, somehow I managed to get full marks in the second year and did get an A. But once I got that C and she said that to me, I was like, well, what's the point of doing law? Yeah. So, I just think from that point, I was like, okay, there is a different way of doing things. And I don't know if I'd read any business books by then. I don't think I had. But I just suddenly thought, actually, there's a way where you don't have to clock in at a certain time. You don't have to ask for holiday. Yeah. I don't mind if I earn a bit less, but actually being in charge of your own schedule, that would be pretty cool.
Yeah, 100%. Like, for me, I have had, like I said, jobs, finished reasonably young in like full-time contracted employment. But my mum was, although she'd had companies and sold companies and exited businesses, she was employed, but was in like sales and account management for big tech firms. So although she was employed, she had a very much an entrepreneurial and very sales-based set of skills, which definitely influenced me and made me get into sales, get into marketing, get into then ultimately running my own businesses. And I think that parental influence can be a positive, even if they're displaying it as a negative or saying like, these aren't the things for you, it can be a positive to then drive you forward. Really interesting. So if we think about you and some of your, what I'd say were like characteristics as a business owner, me working with you for a long time and spending a lot of time with you over the years, is you're really, really consistent. Like you do the ultra running, which we'll talk about in a sec, and you're really, really consistent with pretty much everything you do. Where do you think that consistency bit comes in? Because that's not a common trait, I don't think.
I think it's sort of leaning into your natural strengths. Like I've just always been quite consistent and relatively disciplined.
Right.
Also, I think I know that I'm not an outgoing front man. So
Sure.
I've never been the best at winning business.
Okay.
I've never been particularly like outspoken, particularly loud, particularly kind of confident with people. So probably more subconsciously, but I think subconsciously I knew, okay, I've got to lean into that because there's a lot of people in our industries, and I mean kind of digital marketing, the online space, that kind of thing,
Yeah.
who actually they are very good at presenting themselves, selling themselves. They've got bags of natural confidence and charisma. But I think that they are then pretty crap at kind of following through on what they do.
Yeah.
So for me, it's like, what am I naturally good at? Well, I don't mind working hard. I can be very reliable. I can be consistent. They're values that I appreciate in other people as well. So rather than trying to go, right, here are my weak spots, let's try and fix those, I'm more like, nah, I like fixing weak spots, but actually my strengths are the more like introverted tendencies. So I might as well just play more into those, I suppose.
Really interesting. So most businessy based podcasts, which this is loosely a business podcast, will ask like, tell me about your biggest highs and all that, and your biggest wins and all that type of stuff. And I'm a real big advocate because I've had some crushing failures over my career. I always think that you learn so much more from the failures and then dealing with them than you do from ever any of your wins. So what I'd like to do is just understand some of your like big sort of lows in business, or sometimes that you failed, and like how you dealt with those things to then make a change or to turn them into a positive.
Two definitely spring to mind. One is when I was working at Fitness First, struggling for clients. The gym manager said to me, we've got a rowing challenge going on at the moment. And it was for members, male and female divisions, row 500 metres in the fastest time you can. I don't know what the winner won. It wasn't that much. It's probably like a protein shake or something. But he said, go around the gym, get people to do the challenge, and then you'll just kind of start building a bond. He's like, it's a reason for you to talk to people rather than just being like, do you want PT? Do you want PT?
Yeah.
You can go up and say, look, we've got this challenge on, a bit of fun, do you want to have a go at it? And I remember I got 3 people to do it, and then I got so freaked out having to go around and ask people that we had a small staff room with just one computer in, and you had like I can't remember the name of the software, but it was like a personal training education software that hosted a load of articles. And I asked these 3 people, and I think the 4th person said no. And for whatever reason, I got so freaked out and thought, I just can't do this. I went and sat in that cupboard for the rest of my evening shift. And then when he came in, I was like, oh, I was just doing some research on these articles.
Wow.
That was a bit of a low, I think, because I realised, like, you need to do something. You're not good at this at all. So you need to take some control of this. As it was, I didn't really, because a few months later, I'd left London and moved back home. But I always think back to that and like, yeah, that was a pretty low point for realising what my natural confidence levels were.
Yeah.
And then the other time was when I was fired from a big content writing gig I had. One of the things I didn't say in the backstory, just for the sake of time, was that I had a writing gig working for livestrong.com.
Yeah.
So when they were churning out loads of content, I think I started working for them in about 2012, but it would have been probably 2013, I think. No, probably 2011 I started working for them, and I was churning out about 4 or 5 articles a day on top of all the PT work, and they paid like $20 an article, so it wasn't a lot of money per article, but I could get them done quickly, and it was like an extra probably £20,000-30,000 a year that I was making just from writing content.
Yeah.
And then they accused me of fabricating a reference, and I got an email. There was no rebuttal to it. It was basically like, you're gone. And I think that was because they were just looking to cut costs, because about a year later, the agency who ran the content side of things had closed down. But I remember it was a Wednesday afternoon, and I had to go and do a nutrition workshop that I was co-running with a friend in the evening. And I just turned up to that car park thinking, like, I have no idea what I'm going to do. Like, because I was starting to wind down my PT business. This writing gig was taking off, or had took off, and I could see it, becoming a bigger part of it. And just thinking, I don't want to have to go and get more clients. Like, I've already done 2 years of being with people by 6 a.m, working with them till 9, 10 p.m, doing weekend works. I could see I could see a way out, and it was like it was snatched away from me. So yeah, I think lows-wise, those are probably the 2 biggest ones that come to mind.
And in terms of the first one, so the locking shelf in the cupboard, how do you think that you dealt with that? You might not have dealt with it straight away. It might have been something that you dealt with over time. But how do you think you managed to be the confident person that I think you are now?
I will just add, I didn't actually lock myself in. It was just shutting myself.
You were like Harry Potter locked under the stairs. No, fair enough.
It's taken me a while. I think part of it's just naturally getting more confident.
Yeah.
So when I moved back to Southampton, I was able to get clients in a way that was more naturally me. So I did a lot more, I suppose, had more inbound leads rather than me trying to get them. And I did that with the website, with blogging, with emails, with connections, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
And I would say that as what was I then, like 19, 20, 21, most of my clients were between about 35 and 55. And so spending a lot of time with people who are much older than you, I think that just makes you more confident anyway.
Yeah, definitely.
Because you have to then develop conversational skills. You get used to asking about people's families, people's holidays, that kind of thing. So I didn't really learn any lessons, I don't think, from being that shy, but I was just forced to adapt. And then in later years, I'd say it's almost like, I think you can choose how you show up. As in, I almost have to, like, if I go to an event now, I have to turn a switch, kind of. And it's not like you're a different person. It's more just that I go from my natural state, which is like perfectly happy to talk to people that I know. If people start a conversation with me, I'm fine to talk to them. Like, I quite enjoy a bit of talk, but I'm not naturally someone who's just going to go up and start a conversation.
Yeah.
But I've learned that you kind of have to turn that switch and go, right, this isn't naturally me, but for the next 8 hours, next 2 days, next week, however long you need it to be, I have to be this person. No one here knows how I feel inside. No one here necessarily, if you're at a conference where you don't know a lot of people, they don't know that you're naturally introverted, naturally shy. We all look at those people who are more extroverted and think, I'd love to be like that. Well, you can kind of choose whether you're like that or not. And don't get me wrong, I don't go into seminars now and, shout out, how's everybody doing? And go around and give people, high fives and hugs for everyone. But I'm like, people don't know me. I can go up and I can be a bit louder. I can make a few jokes, that kind of thing. Yeah. Not easy, and I'm not the best at it, but yeah, it certainly helped quite a bit.
Brilliant. As I've got to know you over the years, like I said before, consistency has been a big part of, I think, what I value as one of your really good traits. But you're not one of those people that I'd say were like a morning routine habit type person. What does formulate part of the habits that you have and the sort of routines that you have? You're not sort of the cold plunge guy or anything like that, but what are some of the habits that have made you successful, do you think?
I think being able to leverage stuff that I actually enjoy. Like, I'll be one of the first people to say, I think people sometimes think I'm very, very disciplined because of the running, like the workload and stuff.
Yeah.
But I'm also happy to say that I enjoy those things. It's like, if you said to me, you've got to do a 3-minute ice bath every morning, I obviously could do that, but I think I would look for the first excuse possible to skip that because I hate it. So I think there's maybe something to be said for that, is that I do think you can learn discipline, but at the same time, you can, if it's something that you enjoy doing, even if it's something painful that you enjoy doing, then I think, like, why not leverage that a bit more? That's why I'm always happy to work long hours. I like getting up and just cracking on with work because actually I find it quite fun as well. So yeah, maybe it's shattering an illusion, but I think from a discipline standpoint, I'm very disciplined when I want to be disciplined. Other times I can be quite lazy as well.
So from my understanding then, you lean into your strengths much more than trying to, you said it a couple of times, lean into your strengths a lot more than trying to work on those weaknesses.
Yeah, and don't get me wrong, if a weakness is massively hampering your business, I think, or your personal life, you definitely work to fix that, like the being naturally introverted. Like, there's very little benefit to going to a seminar and just sitting there not talking to anyone. You're just going to look weird, so that you have to work on. But for me, it's like I'm big on outsourcing stuff as well. So if it's a business weakness that I've got, I think, can it be outsourced? Can I understand it enough so I can outsource it effectively?
Yeah.
If I can, I'm not going to worry if I can't build a landing page. Same as, like, yes, it would be nice to do cold plunges, but why do people do them? Well, they do them for their health and for their mental resilience. Well, I've got other ways that I can work on those things.
Got it. So switching up tack a little bit with your, we talked at dinner yesterday about screen time, and mine was horrendously high. Yours was markedly lower than mine, which I was very jealous about. what is the kind of app that you use the most in your business? Are you kind of like an Instagram guide? Like what are you kind of spending your time on?
I don't use the app version of it, but probably Google Docs.
Really?
I spend a lot of time in Google Docs because I just like the simplicity of it. As a copywriter, obviously most of my work is writing.
Yeah.
I'm not a huge fan of some of these other places like a Notion or a ClickUp or anything like that. They're fine. I have clients who use them. It's perfectly acceptable. But yeah, for me, I've always got, I would say probably a good 70% of the tabs open I have at any one time with Google Docs.
Wow.
Like most of my clients, I deliver stuff. Everything is written in Google Docs and it's either delivered via email, via Messenger, WhatsApp, or maybe Slack.
Blimey. So very straightforward, no bells and whistles on there.
Yeah, if you throw a new piece of software at me, yeah, don't expect the best response.
Again, most business podcasts will be like, what's the best piece of advice you've ever got? And I'd like to switch it up. So what's the worst piece of business advice you've ever had?
That's a good one. That's a tough question. I think it's not one piece of advice, but any time someone has tried to teach me how to sell something,
Yeah.
as in over the phone. And I don't think I've had anyone sit down and instruct me on one-to-one sales before. And a lot of advice I've got has been very good. Like I've had people, I remember years ago, a friend's dad talking to me about sales and said, you just need to ask people questions.
Yeah.
And then you're asking questions to figure out, can I help them or not? And then if you can, present them with your offer. But I've certainly done some courses and things like that, or been seminars when a lot of it is very much, right, you always need scarcity, which, yeah, it's a massively valuable principle, but people misuse it or they use it far too often. You know, the whole kind of take it away or take away tomorrow. I remember working with someone a while ago and he looked at a lot of my emails. He's like, why are you not sending an email the day after that's like a cart reopen email?
Yeah.
I'm like, well, because that just seems a bit weird. Like, there was no reason to reopen the cart. He said, no, you just say you had a load of questions. I'm like, but I didn't have a load of questions. So probably anything like that, I think, has been it's not one piece of advice, but yeah, anything that forces you to do something that goes massively against your natural inclination. There are caveats to that as well, as in if your business is in the shit and someone gives you some good advice and you're like, oh, I don't really want to do that. Like, maybe you shouldn't be running a business if you can't take that advice. But yeah, by and large, I think that would be my answer.
Cool. In the copywriting space right now, what's one trend that's happening that you think just needs to die?
People not editing AI. I mean, 99% of this answer will be around AI, whether it's, improper research, poor prompts, anything like that. But it's so easy to spot telltale signs of AI now. I think it's just so lazy that
the double hyphens is my tell.
Yeah,
like, that's so obvious. Like no one gets rid of them. I'm like, what are you doing?
Yeah, things like that. Overuse of emojis. When people say it's not theory, it's practical. Blah blah blah. No fluff, all filler, that kind of thing. Like the word delve is used so much that I think I would put quite a lot of money that I can spot an AI piece of copy most of the time.
Brilliant. You and I spoke and we did a piece of content before about an offer that we were running. But so I think I know the answer to this. But if you were giving advice to someone in business, what would you say is like one particular shift in business that people need to pay attention to at the minute?
Probably transparency, because markets everywhere are getting more sophisticated, more switched on. They're aware much more of other offers to you. And so they will absolutely buy into your skills and expertise and results, but they'll also buy into you as a person. And it's very, very difficult now, where we're so accessible and people are putting out so much content, to build a business that is inauthentic and where you try and hide away. So I just think, be yourself. Like if there's bits of your personality that aren't exactly as you want them to be, it's fine for them to come out. Yeah, if you've got flaws, talk about them. Don't be an absolute melt about it and go on about it all the time. But at the same time, like, you're a real person and most people appreciate that. You can have a bit of an online brand and persona. You can amp up certain characteristics or present yourself in a certain way. That's I've got no issue at all with that. But yeah, being transparent, I think, is only going to be more and more important.
Great. If you had to bet money, I know you're not really a gambler, but if you had to bet money on one thing in business or in copywriting, like going extinct and just getting rid of, what do you think that would be?
Probably, if they've not gone extinct already, I would say people who market themselves as content writers, because AI can do as 90% as good a job as a content writer. So why would anyone bother paying for them?
Yep. I know you're a big reader. We've had a couple of really big readers on the podcast already. Danny Inman gave about 7 book recommendations. I'm not going to ask you for your favourite book or like the one book you recommend, but what's one that in the last 12 months has really stuck with you and gives a bit of a reason why?
I think there's been a few. I've made more of an effort to read kind of consistently this last year.
Yeah.
But I think probably the one I enjoyed the most in the last 12 months is probably Noah Kagan's $1 Million Weekend.
Okay.
Like, there's nothing necessarily groundbreaking in there, and I mean that with no disrespect at all. But it's just a good reinforcement of the basics. There's a few very good concepts in there. Like, he talks about starting with a micro niche, then when you get a bit of a following, expanding that to a niche. When you get a bit more of a following, expanding that to like a mass market approach.
Yeah.
And I think that's something that I was sort of aware of, but reading it like that really brought it to mind. So, like I said, it's like most business books. There's nothing in there that just absolutely blows your mind in terms of being revolutionary, but there's a lot of very good information put in a very accessible way.
What's one system or process or tool that you couldn't live without that you think more people should be using? I don't know, you're not a big like tool guy, like a software guy or anything, but
I'd say maybe this comes more under a practice.
yeah, that's fine.
But just getting started with work early in the day.
Yeah.
I know people work differently, and some people do work better at night or close to a deadline. But I just think of all the productivity stuff outside of maybe a walk or a run or possibly a gym session. I'm like, just get started with work. I think you've got more creativity in the morning for most people. There are fewer distractions. For me, it's like within half an hour of waking up normally, unless I go on a longer run, the laptop's open and I'm working on stuff for me. Yeah. I just think more people need to do that rather than look for like a magic trick to become more productive.
Yeah, I think people putting stuff off until later in the day when they're fatigued already. They've been in the office for God knows how long, or they've been at work for God knows how long. Just accelerates or increases the likelihood of them putting those things off. And if you can, and I've been guilty of it, but I try and tackle my big horrible jobs as early as I can, because A, they're out of my brain, they're out of my headspace, they're out of my worry, and B, they're just done, and I don't have to think about them again.
Yep.
If you lost everything, I don't know, let's say you made a dodgy investment, lost your property, your house, every penny in your bank account, and had to start again, how would you go about it?
Have I still got connections or?
Yeah, your social media profiles are gone. You still got personal connections.
Okay. Honestly, I'd probably just message people and say, how can I be useful for you? I know that's very, very, very simple, but I think that's one of the benefits of maintaining good relationships with people. So
100%.
Everyone I've worked with, as long as they've not been a complete arse, I have tried to keep in contact with in some way. Like I'll add them to my Christmas newsletter that goes out, print newsletter. I'll check in with them on Facebook, even if it's just kind of dropping a like or a comment occasionally on social media. I think if you keep those relationships, firstly, you could be transparent if you've fallen on hard times. I think people generally want to help. Or even if you didn't want to, it could just be that, look, I'm looking to do something new. I've changed of seat. I'm changing what I'm doing. Is there anything I can help you with right now? Not even necessarily paid. What can I do for you?
Yeah, I gave you the example yesterday at dinner about the client that I had in COVID who rang me and just said, like, how are you getting on? And I had a huge decrease in revenue in the business. And he just said, okay, what other things can you do for me so I can pay you more money to help you out? And obviously that was him coming the other way and being a great guy. But I think just asking those questions for people who you've done a really good job for is a great way to kind of at least start something again or increase your revenue if you've not before. Great. Thanks, Mike. Appreciate it. If people wanted to find out more about you, where would they find you?
Best places are probably Instagram, which is the Coffee Shop Copywriter, or all one word, or my website is copywithmike.com.
Brilliant. Thanks so much for watching this latest episode of A Business Space. I'll leave all the links to Mike's stuff underneath here. And if you want to film a podcast like this or any other piece of content for your business, you can get in touch with the Content Space at acontentspace.com. I'll see you all soon. Thanks very much. And I'll see you in the next episode. Bye-bye. Thanks so much for watching this episode of A Business Space podcast. I appreciate you spending the last half an hour or so with me and my guest. If you enjoyed the podcast, please like it, subscribe, and share it with a friend. Hit the little notification bell so that you get notified next time I put up a new episode. And let me know in the comments, what was your favourite bit? What was the part that resonated with you the most?
And if you've got a business or an audience where you think a podcast might work for you and help you develop deeper or more meaningful relationships with your audience and sell more stuff at a higher price, drop me an email. You can get me at stephen@contentspace.com. Look forward to chatting with you soon and stay tuned for the next episode. Take care. Bye-bye.